What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I'm Daniel Oyefusi. That is David Neal. Thanks so much for tuning in. Quick reminder before we start, make sure to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. Now, as you can see, I am not in my normal humble abode in South Florida, Miami. I am in Frankfurt, Germany. So I should have started the podcast with a nice Guten Tag or Guten Abend, good evening. I think I pronounced that right. I am here in Frankfurt for the week as the Dolphins prepare for their big international game against the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. The team, as well as I, not on the same flight, but separate flights, arrived in Frankfurt early Tuesday morning. The Dolphins are spending the entire week in preparation for Kansas City. Mike McDaniel wanted the team to get out here for its off day, experience the city a little bit, go out into the city. It's a lot of players' first time out overseas in the country. So he wanted them to, immerse themselves in the culture on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, they're going to flip the switch. They're going to be all in on preparing for the Chiefs. And I'm doing the same. I'm enjoying the city before I get ready to follow the team and give you your latest Dolphins updates. But we got a lot to talk about. The Dolphins, as I said, getting prepared for what could be a pivotal AFC matchup. There's a four-way tie for first place in the AFC, and the Dolphins, your Miami Dolphins, are one of those teams at the top. They very well could be number one at the end of this week if they come away with a big win. Well, first, we're going to take a step back. Before we talk about that, we got to talk about what was a big bounce back win at Hard Rock Stadium over the New England Patriots, 31-17. We had the debut of Jalen Ramsey. We had another big game from Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So all is good heading into again, a pivotal matchup. But we really want to start with what was the story of the afternoon last Sunday, the debut, the return of Jalen Ramsey. This is what Dolphins fans had waited for several months. He was the team's top offseason acquisition. He, as you know, he tore his meniscus on the second day of training camp. There was a lot of fear he might be out till December. He called his shot. He told Mike McDaniel in week 2 he was going to be back for the second matchup with New England. He was, and he introduced himself pretty well. He got a pick in his first game. Probably should have got an interception. I know I saw your tweet, David, about just gotta cut back inside, and that's 6
I
right there.
thought the knee might have been bothered. I thought the knee might be going.
Looked pretty good. The knee looked pretty good to me.
Yeah, but he looked like kind of like the knee was going. Hey, we're good, but let's cut this off right here.
He played 49. He played all but the last 4 snaps.
Right.
So he was working pretty well for
That's
most
a
of that
lot
game.
of work.
Most definitely.
Need a lot of work.
Yeah. He said that wasn't the plan. He said, hey, the plan wasn't for me to play 49 snaps. That's just the way the game flow kind of worked out. There weren't a lot of long drives. But again, I mean, this was about as good of a debut as anyone could have expected. There were a lot of talks even before the Dolphins traded for him about whether he had been falling off a little bit. He didn't look like it on Sunday. And obviously, that was a really big addition to the defense. I mean, we still haven't seen this defense at full strength. His kind of running mate in the secondary, Xavier Howard, he wasn't out there. He was sidelined because of a groin injury. Javon Holland wasn't able to play at safety because of a concussion protocol that he just didn't fully pass. So we still had some moving parts on the defense, but again, Jalen Ramsey, like he looked the part. I mean, Tua said the hype is real with that guy. I mean, when you talk about a shutdown corner, that's what we saw. A guy that they don't throw to his side. He was only targeted 3 times. He gave up 1 catch, but otherwise looked really good. He even forced a fumble earlier in the game before the pick that was kind of negated by a holding penalty, but still you saw the playmaking that the defense hasn't really had. And again, when they threw to his side, it's funny. I tweeted like Mac Jones isn't even looking at Jalen Ramsey's side. Like, they were just going at Eli Apple most of the game. And then lo and behold, a couple minutes later, they throw at Jalen Ramsey's side and you see what happens. Vic Fangio said something, the defensive coordinator said something very interesting a couple of days ago. That was kind of different from what he had talked about with the loss of Jalen Ramsey the day or the days after he was injured. The days after he was injured, I asked him how much does his absence impact what you were kind of planning to do or what you can call. And I think that he didn't want to like make too much of it. He said, "Hey, we're still gonna incorporate our defense. We're still gonna, put our defensive plays in and whatnot." But a couple of days ago, before Ramsey ultimately made his debut, he said, "Hey, ultimately, like what your corners can do on the outside really dictates what you can do as a defense." And I think we saw a glimpse of that. He was shut down. If you look at Mac Jones's kind of throw chart from ESPN next or NFL's Next Gen Stats, he did not throw to the right side of the Dolphins defense. And that's where Jalen Ramsey was for the majority of that game. So you get Xavier Howard back, who I think has been playing pretty well before the injury. The pass rush is starting to come along. It's kind of a residual trickle down effect. I'm not saying that they're going to be that good. The Patriots are the Patriots, especially on offense. But I'm very bullish. I mean, hey, I've been saying for months, I think this defense can be elite. We haven't seen it thus far, but you got a little glimpse of what it could be with Jalen Ramsey back. And I mean, I have nothing but great things and to say about his debut. What you think?
Oh, I thought it was obviously an impressive debut, especially for someone who's coming back early off an injury, as we said, as has been pointed out, and played a lot of snaps.
Yeah.
And hey, he looked really good. Obviously, in the interception, that was instinct and athleticism, and just veteran knowledge. Came off his guy, saw where Mac Jones was going. It's like, okay, fine. Oh, you think you got this? No, you don't. And that's you are starting to see the last few weeks. You've seen more pressure up the middle on the passer, more I think more dominance in the middle, and then you've also you're seeing Bradley Chubb kind of get if not get home with the quarterback, at least get close to home to where he's affecting things and where he's he's got to be a guy who if he doesn't get you the sack or the pressure, he at least has to force you at least want them to force other teams to deal with him and devote personal just to dealing with him, which obviously it's like anything else, it opens up opportunities for other people. And obviously it's especially in a pass heavy league, your corners, the amount of people you have to devote to stopping the other team's top wide receivers, that clearly dictates what else you can do, because it dictates how many other people you have to play with. Yeah. If you can put two corners out there and say, okay, that's I've got your top two receivers taken care of, and now we can play the rest of our defense. We're going to play 9 on 8, because unless you're accounting for a spy on the quarterback, you're playing 9 on 8. That defensive coordinators can come up with all kinds of good ideas then, but it's when you have to, as teams are having to do with the Dolphins, you want to double this guy, you want to make sure somebody has help on this guy if you need. Suddenly those numbers flip the other way, and suddenly the options open up for the offense. So yeah, nice debut for Jalen Ramsey. Good game by the Dolphins defense. Very good game, I think. And I think they had a pretty good game. I think they look good at times against Philadelphia. I think they look very good at times against Philadelphia. I think they look better than I thought they would actually at some times against Philadelphia. So
I was gonna say Vic Fangio did say like Vic Fangio said, hey, we pretty much supplied 10 of the 17 points that they scored, 2 weeks ago against Philly, because of the pick six and the strip sack that resulted in a field goal. So we said, hey, if we had 1 or 2 more plays kind of bounce our way, we're probably looking at it like a great performance. So we have seen that improvement, and then obviously you get Ramsey back, and you're hoping we're going to talk about this in the second half, but maybe you get some more of these guys back on defense and offense. I think the real question is like, can this be an elite unit? Because when they brought Jalen Ramsey into this defense, and that was a couple weeks after they had hired Vic Fangio, the expectation internally, externally was this is going to be like one of the best units in the NFL. I think the question is, can they be dominant now? Because you have an offense that, on its kind of off days is scoring 27, 30 points. Now if you have a defense that looks more like it did against the Patriots, as opposed to, whether it's the Chargers or the Bills or maybe the Eagles game, if you have a defense that's, getting after the quarterback, forcing turnovers, and holding the opponent in the 20s, then it's like, all right, you got something now. Because so far it's like the offense has been very good, kind of coming up short in some of the matchups against some of the better defenses, but the defense really hasn't performed all that well against, elite caliber opponents. And obviously, you play who's on your schedule, but that's just the fact of the matter. Against the better offenses, they haven't played as well. But the question for the rest of the year is now, if healthy, and again, there's a good chance that they're going to have the entire projected starting defense on Sunday, can they be an elite unit? I think they can, but truthfully, I think this weekend is gonna go a long way into letting us know whether this is fool's gold or whether this is legit.
Well, Casey's an interesting test because obviously you've got, it all starts with Mahomes and what he can create and what he can give time for his receivers to create and do. And you've got Travis Kelce, who, I got to think defensive coordinators get together in the offseason, and the second Travis Kelce's name is mentioned, out comes the tequila and and everybody starts like doing shots like, I can't, we don't know, what are we doing? And they're like trading notes. What did you try? What did you try? Because it's not like, everybody's trying everything to guard this guy, and he still gets open. And even if you shut him down for a good portion of the game, it always seems like he gets open for that touchdown you really can't afford to give up. And so that's another interesting challenge. And then you have a wide receiving core that's frankly been very lately.
Yeah, I mean,
they've been really
just kind of good.
Yeah. I mean, they lost the Lions game. They lost that season opener. And they're dropping balls all over the place. This is a wide receiving core that I look at and go, okay, this isn't like when they had Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins, those guys running around there. And so I'd like to think that the Dolphins, if their defense is becoming the defense they want to be, they can make they can sit on KC. You're not going to, I don't think you're going to shut them down completely unless, Mahomes has one of those games like he had last week where he starts getting a little desperate and he starts making some of those desperate.
And that may have been the worst. That may have been the worst offensive game in the Mahomes era. Just looking at some stats that I found. Yeah,
that was really bad. It was really bad. But that's one thing about KC though. If you can sit on for a little while and frustrate them enough, Mahomes makes enough of those plays that you just think, oh my God, how did he do that? What, he shouldn't even try that. He makes enough. He connects on a high enough percentage of low percentage plays that he keeps that nobody's going to tell him not to try it. But if you're, a good defense can make him pay for those and can, those low percentage plays turn into, low percentage remain low percentage plays and can turn into interceptions. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see if the Dolphins can force that out of Kansas City. If they, how much they can limit Kelce's damage. And, it's also, I think, going to be also an interesting challenge for the Dolphins offense because Casey's defense is actually playing pretty well.
Yeah, they're one of the better defense in the NFL, one of the best defenses.
Right. And if this were a, Casey offense of like last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, with this Casey defense, I wouldn't like the Dolphins' chances very much. But But I think this is going to be a very interesting yardstick game for both sides of the ball. And you'd like to see the Dolphins defense, if they're going to be the defense they want, you'd like to see them, you don't think you're going to shut them down completely, but you want to see them limit the damage, limit the Kelsey damage and really limit the wide receiver damage. I'm not seeing Casey's running game getting it done against the Dolphins, but I've been wrong before, obviously. But I think they're going to sit on the running. I think, the Dolphins can pick up the run on the go. And so I think this is going to be a really interesting game for both sides of the ball. But if the Dolphins defense is coming on, and this is going to tell them, okay, here's how far you've come, is that, can you prevent KC from even getting what not many points they've needed to win some of these games? Can you prevent them from even getting that?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting matchups. Obviously, Kelsey being top, obviously the number one in terms of pass catching options. I think it's going to be interesting to see just kind of overall what Vic Fangio's game plan. I mean, he has had a lot of experience, facing Patrick Mahomes as the former Denver Broncos coach. So, we're going to talk to him on Thursday as well as, the normal roundup of availability out here in Germany. So, very excited and interested to see what he has to say as well. All right, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back on the other side of things, how important is this game to the Dolphins? We're going to talk about that, as well as our expectations for Tyreek Hill in his first game against his former team. And then we're going to round it out with some game predictions. So stay locked with us, and we'll be back soon. What's going on, everybody? Still here on the Dolphins In Depth podcast in Frankfurt, Germany, alongside David Neal, talking all things Dolphins. Now, in the first half, we talked about the Dolphins win over the Patriots, which was headlined by the return of Jalen Ramsey to the lineup. Segueing into this weekend's game, Dolphins-Chiefs, both teams 6-2, both teams tied for first place in the AFC. I know there's a lot of permutations with the tiebreakers, but more or less, the winner of this game will be number one in the AFC after week 9. Another, as David mentioned before, kind of yardstick measuring game against the Dolphins, who I know a lot of fans do not like when this is brought up and have a lot of objections to this kind of narrative. But the Dolphins, all 6 wins have come against losing teams with losing records. Their 2 losses thus far have come against teams with the winning records. They're obviously facing a very good Chiefs team this weekend. I feel in terms of, I guess we spoke about the kind of narrative of the Dolphins' track record against quality opponents after last week after the Eagles game. But I think there's 2 components to it, as I kind of mentioned before. There's kind of public perception, and it's just, and as you also alluded to, internally the confidence of the team. I would say this is a very important game, probably the biggest game of the year so far, and probably maybe all season for the Dolphins for several reasons. It is the defending Super Bowl champions. You are getting a real good look at where you stack up in the conference against a team that you're probably gonna have to go through in order to reach the Super Bowl, to get to the AFC Championship game, and possibly get to the Super Bowl. Yeah, obviously, as I mentioned before, the record standpoint of it, that's a huge tiebreaker. To be 1 game above the Chiefs, 1 full game ahead of the Chiefs, and to have the tiebreaker is immense. It's essentially, a 2-game lead on the Chiefs. I would say, but just for the simple fact as well as that, the Dolphins aren't really out of the woods when it comes to their own division. I know that the Bills haven't looked good, but they're only 1 game behind. So, you don't take care of business this weekend, and the Chiefs and the Bills take care of business. I mean, you're not only not number 1 in the conference, you're not number 1 in the division. So I would really like, of all games, we know that they came up short against the Bills, they came up short against the Eagles. If there's any game for them to lose, honestly, on the schedule, it's probably that Eagles game, because it's non-conference, so it doesn't really matter to where the tie-breaking matters. But I would say this game kind of means everything for the Dolphins, and really maybe not as much to very little for the Chiefs. Because as I said before, the reason why there's this narrative with the Dolphins, and whether fair or not, it has followed them over the first half of the season because they don't have the track record of a team like the Chiefs. We've seen the Chiefs start off slow and lose some games, be close to 500, and then turn it up in the second half of the season. Now, I'm not saying that they're necessarily going to do that. I don't know, but they do have that benefit of the doubt because we've seen them do it. We've seen teams like the Bengals who are starting to turn things up and are starting to get a little hot. We've seen them do it in the past en route to the Super Bowl. We've seen the Bills do it as well. So when you talk about, why aren't these teams getting knocked for losing to bad teams, as we just saw the Chiefs lose to the Broncos, it's because we've seen the Chiefs turn it up and then play their best against the top opponents in the NFL, and then start to go on a run. We've seen the Bills do that. We've seen the Bengals do that as well. We haven't necessarily seen the Dolphins do it. I mean, they are a young team. This is only the second year with Tua and Mike McDaniel together, this kind of iteration of this team. We've only been together for one season and about one and a half seasons, more or less. So they don't really have that track record. So when you see teams talk about, them not beating quality opponents, I'm not saying they're frauds. I said it last week. I'll say it again. I don't think they're frauds. But as I put on Twitter, I think two things can be true. The Dolphins aren't frauds, and their track record against elite teams is worth monitoring. You're not going to win all the games, but
you have to win some of them.
Exactly. You got to win some of them. And I've said it to many people. The Dolphins can win 12, 13. They can win 14 games. But if they lose to all the teams that they're going to have to beat when it matters most, the Buffaloes, the Chiefs, the Ravens later on in the schedule, they can rack up a whole bunch of wins. But if they don't beat any of the teams that they're going to have to face in mid-January, early January, how, when we talk about public perception, am I supposed to feel confident in the team? I still think they're a very, very good team, but at some point, you do have to win these games, regardless of injuries, regardless of officiating, regardless of whether it's on the road or at home. You got to win these games at some point. So I think this means everything for the Dolphins and not so much for the Chiefs, just because of where kind of where these two franchises stand and their history and their track record.
I don't think it means everything for the Dolphins. I think it means a lot for the Dolphins. If it was later in the season, I would say everything.
Yeah,
we're at game 9. We're exactly the midpoint of a 17-game schedule. You got 8 behind you. Got 8 going to have 8 ahead of you. But obviously there is the whole head-to-head conference record. Tiebreakers, when it comes to those playoff tiebreakers, you want them in your favor because there is a definite difference in January between being in Hard Rock Stadium or in Arrowhead, even if you get an unseasonably warm day in Arrowhead.
I think the Dolphins right now, until they prove me otherwise, I don't have confidence that the Dolphins can win multiple playoff games on the road right now. I just don't have that confidence in them, which is why I think they have to get the number 1 seed right now.
That puts a lot of importance on this game, obviously. But I think if it were later in this, here's why I say I think if it were later in the season, it actually would mean even more. Not because games later we mean more. No, there's the win-loss column.
It's the same.
It's the same. There's no special thing for this is a win in December versus this is a win in September. No. Every year somebody misses the playoffs because of what they didn't do in September or October. I think if the Dolphins lose this game, I honestly think they step back and they know what their record, they know the record against teams over 500. They know the record. They know, hey,
McDaniel said we know the narrative. McDaniel said I know the narrative.
Because it's not even the narrative. They know the facts.
Yeah. The narrative is rooted in facts.
Right. And so they can say they can step back and say, okay, this is where we are. And now we've got, X number of games to move forward and close that gap. Okay. If this happens in December and you're still talking about this, there's not a lot of time to get yourself together and close the gap that you need to close.
Yeah.
Now,
I will say though real quick, there's a real opportunity though, because I was looking at the schedule. The Bills play the Bengals on Monday Night Football. The Bills have looked. They're gonna have a kind of. They're coming off of a mini bye, but they've looked shaky the past couple weeks.
Yeah.
The Bengals, as I mentioned before, are starting to pick things up. 7-3, or excuse me, sorry, 7-2 with a 1-game lead on the Chiefs and potentially a 2-game lead on the Bills at essentially the halfway point because they got their bye afterward. That looks so much better than possibly 6-3. You're knocked down the standings in the AFC. And, if the Bills take care of business against the Bengals, you're second in the division. The former looks a lot better. And I know that you still have a lot of games to be played.
Right. But there's still a lot of games left.
There's a cushion. You give yourself a really good cushion for the last 8 games.
You have a chance to do that. And you also have a chance to just, win the game. Buffalo wins the game and you keep your lead.
But then you're first in the conference with the head-to-head win.
But I do think this means a lot to the Dolphins too. So, because again, you can have all the confidence in the world, but after a while, if you try to do something, 3, 4, 5 times and you don't do it, it's real hard when you got to, come in to do it time number 6 to feel like you can do it. If there's not like a major change or anything, a reconstitution of your roster or just some major difference. And that's probably not going to happen in season, even getting players healthy. That's not the kind of change you're talking about. So, like I said, I think the Dolphins need one of these wins for their own, their own
confidence. I mean, they're
confident people.
I think they're confident, but you think that they need it.
They're confident. They're confident as athletes. You have to be confident as a professional athlete to just survive in the whole thing. They are, but they're also not unrealistic. They're also human, and they're also, again, like I said, you try to do something 3, 4, 5 times, and you think I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. We're doing it this day, and it doesn't happen. And you're like, okay. That happens a few times, and after a while, you're just saying those words. You're not actually believing that, and that's a natural human thing. Yeah. And these are humans. They're very talented humans. They're very driven humans. They are, they go through a lot. Their mental preparation for what they do on a weekly basis is incredible. But at some point, so I think it's an important game for that. And if they lose it, I don't think they're going to fall apart or anything. I don't think that means they're not going to beat Baltimore. They're not going to beat Dallas, or they're not going to beat Buffalo down the road. I think Mike McDaniel's, as a coach, I think he's, smart enough and calm enough and not, spaz. He's not going to spaz. He's going to say, okay, this is where we are. Yeah. And let's try to get better. And let's see what we need to do to get this done. What are we not doing? Yeah. Where are we lacking? And I think he's smart enough, level-headed enough to have that approach. And so I think it means, like I say, I think it means a lot to the Dolphins. I think for Kansas City, I think it's a game. I think they feel like they're going to, look at their division. The
division's already. The AFC West is already clinched, not officially, but
they're pretty much feeling okay. They're going to take their division, and they have that confidence. The chunk of that team, hey, they've got rings on their fingers. They've been there. They've been close. They've been every single year they've won some of these kinds of games for the last since 2018 at least. Yep. Every single year they've won some of these kinds of games. So. They can lose. They can get. If the Dolphins drill them, they can come back and go. Okay, well,
like we know that we can turn it up. When it matters.
We know we can be better, and we know we need to close the gap now, and we know we can close that gap because we closed that gap before.
Yeah,
and and so the game means, it's not like the game means nothing to them, but it means something. It means a lot. And I think they want to, obviously, like we said, difference. Hard Rock Stadium, Arrowhead, you know, Kansas City would love nothing more than to have everybody have to come through that wind tunnel of noise.
Yep.
In January to try to get to the Super Bowl. Yeah, good luck with that. That's a tough task.
Yeah.
And so, this game I think means more to the Dolphins than the Chiefs. I think it means a lot to the Dolphins, but and I think I think it's there for them. It's a game that's there for them. I think this is I feel like this is a much more winnable game than I thought that Philly game was. And
yeah,
especially after they lost their starting guard early in the game, I was like,
yeah. I mean, credit to the Dolphins for, at one point they had 4 starters down the offensive line. They were still able to move the ball down the field. I'm looking at my phone a lot right now because, as you all know, today is trade deadline day. We don't have any Dolphins news for those, either watching on YouTube or listening. But Chase Young just got traded to the 49ers. So rich get richer in the NFL. Still just kind of monitoring whether there's any Dolphins news, again, because of the time difference. We're recording early evening in Germany, early afternoon in Miami. So, if there is any
Josh Dobbs, the Vikings.
We had Montez Sweat to the Bears earlier. So if there's any Dolphins news breaking while we're wrapping up the pod, we'll obviously extend it, continue. If news breaks afterward, we'll kind of come back and put it all together and make it work. But as we transition to more a lot of storylines this weekend. Obviously one of the biggest ones is Tyreek Hill returning. Well, not returning, but facing his former team for the first time since last year's trade. When the schedule first came out, I think that a lot of people probably had a mixture of emotions when they saw that it was Dolphins-Chiefs. Obviously, there was the excitement that the game was in Germany, but the disappointment that the game wasn't in Kansas City for Tyreek Hill's kind of homecoming. He spoke about that after Sunday's game against the Patriots. Said he was a little disappointed, not able to go there, but still he's able to connect with some of his former teammates that he's still close with, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, obviously head coach Andy Reid. I know this is a game he is probably circled on his calendar. By all accounts, it was an amicable kind of divorce. Obviously, there was money at play. He and the Chiefs not able to come to an agreement. And I wrote the story last year when he was introduced as a Dolphin. His agent Drew Rosenhaus, prominent agent based in South Florida, it said that he brought up the idea. Rosenhaus brought up the idea of maybe finding a trade partner who was with a team that was willing to give up the draft capital to the Chiefs, as well as give the contract that Tyreek Hill sought. As we all know, it kind of came down to the Dolphins and the Jets. Tyreek Hill said that he picked the Dolphins, but the Dolphins also sealed the deal with their draft capital and what was then a record-breaking contract for a wide receiver. By all accounts, this has been, and we've seen it with our eyes, I think this has probably been more than the Dolphins could have imagined. When you look at Tyreek Hill, the player, and kind of Tyreek Hill, the leader. Along with Mike McDaniel, I would say the 2 people who have changed the culture in Miami, it's been Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill. Obviously, Mike McDaniel for bringing in the kind of the offensive ingenuity, the scheme, and empowering Tua Tagovailoa. But Tyreek Hill, in his own right, doing that as well, empowering Tua as well as his performance on the field. This is obviously he was on his way to a Hall of Fame season in Kansas City. But what he's done these last 2 seasons have really cemented that in my eyes. If he wasn't a Hall of Famer before then, he's definitely a Hall of Famer now. Last Sunday he became the first wide receiver in the Super Bowl era to record 1,000 yards in the first 8 games of the season. He leads the NFL in receiving yards, touchdowns. He's on pace, obviously, for more than 2,000 yards, which would also be a new single season record. And it just feels like he played a big part in just kind of bringing this kind of fun, this loose kind of not loose culture in terms of sloppy, but in terms of everyone feeling free,
right?
And everyone's personality coming out. A lot of that the touchdown dances that you see at the end, that's Tyreek. That's him, orchestrating it with his teammates on Friday and making sure that guys are having fun and whatnot. And I don't think that Tyreek Hill maybe had like a bad reputation in Kansas City, but we definitely attributed, what they were doing in Kansas City more to Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and obviously to an extent, Travis Kelce. They kind of shared the wealth there. And I think that, there was a lot of talk about, hey, Tyreek Hill's not going to be as productive when he comes over to Miami. Obviously, I think a big part of that was people not believing in Tua. But all of that has changed. I mean, I thought he was going to put up his numbers regardless, because when you're a good wide receiver, when you're a great wide receiver, the ball is going to come to you. But I couldn't have imagined this. And I think he's going to have a big game. I think Mike McDaniel knows that this is a big game. This means a lot to him. I think they're going to feed him. I mean, hey, he had like 13 targets last time against the Patriots. He might have close to 20 against the Chiefs. But I'm expecting a big game from Tyreek for sure.
I think even if he's like a boxer who's a big a really a big puncher, we'll go old school, like, Durant when he was a lightweight, or, a guy like Sugar Ray Robinson, where even if you do everything right and you fight your best fight, you got to come out of that fight looking like you've been in a fight. And even if you win the fight, you might look like you lost it. And that's Tyreek right
so
now.
You can cover him perfectly.
Right. Everything,
he just finds a way. He finds a
we
little
did a great
sliver.
job on him. He had 5 catches for $120 and a touchdown.
Yeah.
And so you kind of say, well, guess we're happy it wasn't, 10 for 200 and 2 touchdowns. So I think that's where he is right now in this offense.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this offense is. I think that's where, and he's, one of the main guys that makes it go. And I think it would be they'll want to force the ball to him. They'll want to give him the ball a lot. Yeah. The guys on the other side kind of know that too. So
yeah, they have a good defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo.
I think it'd be, if the Dolphins are smart with it, I think they can use that to their advantage. Tyreek will get his yards. He'll have his moments. I don't think there's any way they're going to shut him down.
Yeah.
I think he's going to have his moments. So maybe similar to a little bit to Kelce. You just can't let Tyreek Hill have moment after moment after moment after moment.
And that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah. And so, and if you hold him to 100, 120, 130 yards.
Hold him to 120.
Right. On 7 catches, you got to say, okay, well,
we tried. Yeah.
But you might look at that and go, okay, well, if they throw the ball at him 15, 20 times.
Yeah.
And, he gets 6 or 7 catches for,
we'll live with that.
We'll live with that. And sometimes in across team sports, sometimes you got to concentrate your fire on the number 2 guy and say, okay, look, we can try all we want to shut down the number 1 guy. And then if that fails, we've not only failed to shut down the number 1 guy, but we've left ourselves open to getting battered by the number 2 guy and the number 3 guy. And then we get run out of the building. And there's a number of times that you've seen guys say, okay, look, we can't let him go crazy, but, we'll let him do what he's going to do. And let's keep everybody else from, completing the beating. And so I think he's going to have a good game. I can't remember when he's not had a good game. It seems like
he had a quiet game.
He looks like a good game.
Yeah, he had a quiet-ish game for her standards in week 2. But outside of that,
and he's still going to hit you. I think he's going to hit. He's going to get a touchdown or 2. It's a matter of how many yards, how many big plays, and that's going to be the real question. But Yeah, I'm sure he's jacked up about this game, and I'm sure I'm sure their defense is jacked up also for it. I mean, I'm sure he knows guys there,
Yeah.
and this is also going to be guaranteed. This game, however this game comes out, there's going to be there's going to be talk about it in the offseason back and
Yeah.
forth.
I mean, it was interesting. It was just that it was interesting because it feels like one of the rare. I know Kansas City's offense hasn't looked quite like Kansas City's offense since he left, but it feels like one of the rare, like truly win-win deals where
Right.
the Chiefs are able to bring in some young talent, free some cap space. I mean, they won a Super Bowl, so it's hard not to like
They
label
got
them
to
a
do that.
winner. But I know a lot of people were saying, "Oh, well, I'm sure Tyreek wishes he was on the team." I was like, "Hey, Tyreek had a career year last year,
Yeah.
got his money. I mean, he's fine. He's like, I'm good. I'm like my
Right.
legacy
And
is
it's not like he didn't have a ring also already from that.
exactly. So it's not
And
like he's chasing.
that
It's not
he
like
played
he's
a major
chasing
role in
that
getting. So
for
you
sure.
know they and everybody it's like everybody on both sides vindicate themselves. Tyreek went had a huge year,
He proved
and
that he wasn't just a product of
right,
Patrick Mahomes and Andy
Holmes
Reid.
and Andy Reid and
Mahomes,
all
a lot
that
of people were
season.
saying early last year that maybe he can't be the same guy he was before without Tyreek, and he goes out there, he wins MVP, Super
Right,
Bowl MVP, another
and
ring.
so
So a
everybody
very rare win-win where
right. Everybody felt vindicated. Everybody got what they wanted out of it, and so now, yeah, this is going to be yeah, this like I said, I expect him to. He's gonna land some big blows, big punches. To go back to the metaphor,
yeah.
it's gonna be can he land the combinations? Can they even land the combinations and the Dolphins getting the knockout?
Yeah, I
So
mean he showed up for Patriots game with kind of the old Tyreek Hill look. He got rid of the locks and everything. He had just the regular fade, hot top on top with the fade on the sides. And he said, "Hey, this is the old Casey look. I'm letting them know, when they see me, it's gonna be problems." So he's amped up for that. That brings us to our predictions portion of the pod. I gotta say, I've been wrestling with my prediction probably more so than any week this season. When the schedule first came out, I did say, well, at least I wrote in my predictions that the Dolphins were going to win this game. I've said before the season, I think that the most talented team in the AFC, even more talented than KC from top to bottom. Um, Nothing through the first half of the season has led me to kind of come off that stance. However, I guess my perspective in picking the Dolphins is I'm very concerned about Casey coming off a game where they probably had their worst offensive performance in the Mahomes era. They turned the ball over several times, which led to the Denver's points, and the fact that they're just one of those franchises, kind of like the Steelers, the Patriots, where it's like, or Patriots of old. When they lose, they usually don't lose back-to-back games. They bounce back. I think that this is probably going to be the healthiest the Dolphins have been all season, possibly. We got to monitor the status of Robert Hunt, who left with a hamstring injury, but McDaniel said he's day to day. They could get Teron Armstead back at left tackle. He's eligible to return to practice. We'll find out Wednesday whether they're opening that practice window. I'm assuming that Javon Holland's going to be back because he was in the later stages of concussion protocol. I'm assuming that Xavier Howard and Connor Williams are going to be back. Like, I was kind of thinking, hey, they're holding these guys out for these types of games, for this type of game. They've been very, very cautious and kind of conservative when it comes to bringing guys back from injuries. But X has had 2 weeks off. Connor Williams has had 3 weeks off. I tend to think that they're probably going to play this game, and they all know the importance of this game, so they're going to be pushing to play this game. So health wise, I think the Dolphins are going to be in the best spot that they've been all year. So I think they're going to be good there. I think they match up pretty well on offense. When it comes to the Dolphins offense against the Chiefs defense, they just lost their starting linebacker, Nick Bolton, in the middle of the defense. I think that's a big loss. I think that Tyreek, as we said, we think he's going to have a big game. I think Jalen Waddle is set up to have a really big game. It's the other side where I'm a little like we said with Tyreek, with Travis Kelce, those guys are going to get theirs. I don't think that the wide receivers on the Chiefs concern me, but we've seen Travis Kelce take over a game and get 12 catches for 150, We've seen that. And again, the Dolphins defense has shown, or what they've shown this far this season, that they've struggled against those elite quarterbacks, those guys that can move around, extend plays, and whatnot. But again, we haven't really seen this defense, the defense that I think we'll see on Sunday, where they have the entire starting lineup and they have Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard out there. One of the kind of secondary things that I'm looking at is how they perform in a neutral crowd, because they've struggled on the road, but this is going to be a true neutral crowd. You know, when I went to the UK for Dolphins Jaguars, there were fans from all types of teams out there. Like, all teams were represented. It wasn't a pro Dolphin crowd. It wasn't a pro Jaguars crowd necessarily. Germany is the Kansas City Chiefs kind of home market, so maybe we will see a little bit more. But I think Dolphins fans are gonna travel well, or there's gonna be some Dolphins representation. So I wonder, like, does that impact how the offense, operates? Because we've seen them struggle when they're not at home. Maybe that's kind of like a little subplot that might shake out. All that is to say, I'm gonna go with the Dolphins. I don't have a lot of conviction on this pick. But I'm gonna stay true to what I said preseason, that they were gonna win this game. I think I predicted them losing to the Bills on the road. I predicted them losing to the Eagles on the road before the season, and I said they were gonna beat the Chiefs. I'm gonna stick to it. I don't remember what my initial score was, but I think it's gonna be a high scoring game. I think it's gonna be, this is probably the best game of the week for sure. Might be best game of the season, the first half of the season. I think the Dolphins, they pull out a close one, 34-31, something like that.
I'm going to go with you danced around that one for a long
No, I mean, I set it up.
man.
I set it
that
up.
That was like first dance, mama and the groom
I had to
dance,
set it up. They don't want to just
bride dance. They're gone. I could have done the Soul Train Scramble about 6 times there during that. So I will, while you were doing that dance and I was able to think, and no, I'm going to go with the Dolphins. I'm going to say on red zone efficiency, and I'm going to go with 31-27. This is a different matchup that, it's everything's about the matchups in any sport, and I think this is a different matchup than, obviously a very different matchup than with the Eagles, and
not as much firepower on the trenches.
I like the Dolphins. I like the way the defense matches up better with Casey's offense. Again, they had a really bad week last week, and you probably should expect that this week at practice. Just everything about the way they push the game, it's going to be, a little more, much more intense, much more focused.
Chiefs, we talked about it before. The Chiefs, this might not necessarily be like, meaning the world to the Chiefs, but they're going to be ready. They're going to be ready.
But this for them is about, okay, we can't, that business last week can't be allowed to continue.
Yeah,
and so I think they're going to be more focused than they, more focused than maybe they were in practice last week. They're going to make sure they're going to try to make sure that they're about as, locked in, on their task, and on regaining some crispness to their offense as they can be. I don't think they're going to have an intensity or focus advantage on the Dolphins. I just think it's compared to probably their previous selves, what they were going into last week. It's the natural reaction, and it's the natural reaction of very good teams. And, but that said, they still are who they are, or what they've shown to be so far. And until they, especially that wide receiver core, shows themselves to be something different, I like the Dolphins matchup against them. And when the Dolphins have the ball. I think I think the Dolphins might not move the ball as well as they would like, but I think they're gonna get some short fields, and there's they're gonna get some stuff from the defense. And they've gotten it the last 2 weeks. They've gotten, big plays from the defense that have set them up well. And I think they're gonna get it again this week. And so I'm gonna go with 31-27. A sort of high scoring game. But not necessarily because both offenses are marching up and down the field with each other. I think some defense is going to make some plays, but the Dolphins defense is going to make more plays and put their offense in better position more times. And the Dolphins efficiency in the red zone will win out, even though, tight ends tight ends are the ones who, are big red zone targets, and, the Chiefs have the best one. But I still think the Dolphins are going to come out of this 31-27.
Yeah. I mean
but I wouldn't bet on the game.
It's gonna be a close
game.
game. I think the Chiefs, again, it's kind of a neutral site game. The Chiefs I believe are favored by 2 or 2.5. You mentioned takeaways. I mean, if both teams are kind of going up and down the field, the takeaway here or there could be the key. The Dolphins haven't really done that well in generating turnovers this season, but as we saw last week, with Jalen Ramsey back there, maybe Xavier Howard back in the lineup, maybe do another opportunity or more opportunities to get your hands on the ball. Another factor, kind of maybe subplot factor that I failed to mention earlier, was the fact that the Dolphins are spending the entire week outside in Germany preparing for the game. The Chiefs are actually coming here Thursday afternoon. I think McDaniel, as well as, wanting the team to be here and bond together and sightsee before the preparation. He noted kind of the sports science aspect, adjusting your body, ahead of the game. We've seen, it have kind of conflicting results, but I will say the Ravens spent the entirety of the week out in London. The Titans came late in the week. The Ravens won that game. The Jaguars got to spend an extra week out in UK because they had back-to-back games out there. The Bills came late in the week. Jaguars obviously won that game. So maybe there is something there. Regardless, we're both taking the Dolphins this week. And it would be a big win over the Chiefs.
That's a real. I'm a little surprised at that from the Chiefs. I mean, also this is a 9:30 in your normal body clock game, and you're not giving your team much of a chance to, kind of get their bodies on this clock, on German time, on Berlin time. And even though it's in Frankfurt, yes, I know, but that's the way that the rest of Europe sometimes refers to it. So that's an interesting move by the Chiefs. Because I thought it's natural to do what the Dolphins did.
I think what we've seen over especially I guess maybe the past couple years or so, is teams are kind of warming up to the idea of spending the entirety of the week out there. Sometimes you kind of think of it as a distraction, but ultimately you're kind of getting, for the Dolphins' perspective, they're kind of getting the distractions out the way so they don't have to cram all the stuff on Saturday. Like they went to the UK late in the week 2 years ago. They did a lot of their sightseeing stuff on Saturday, but now they take care of that on their off day. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they can focus on preparation. And then Saturday, maybe you go out a little bit, but you're not really worried about that. Your focus is really on the game because you've taken all the touristy aspects out of it. So we'll see.
And you're able to stay on your regular schedule.
Exactly. So we'll see if that that tactic works out. I mean, there's no way to know for sure, but they're definitely, I guess, they're talking about process oriented over results oriented. Process wise, they're definitely going the right way. So we'll see how that works out for them this week. All right, that brings us to the end of another edition of the Dolphins in Depth podcast, the jam-packed Dolphins in Depth podcast. I want to thank you guys as always for tuning in. Reminder to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. You definitely want to subscribe to the
Miami Herald
because I'm out here in Frankfurt with the team, giving you updates. We've got the normal rundown. So Tua Tagovailoa, Mike McDaniel on Wednesday, coordinators on Thursday, as well as key players throughout the week. I have a ton of updates, injuries, preparation for the Chiefs, and a lot more. Got a lot of fun stories coming your way this week. So definitely subscribe to Miami Herald. We'll be back next week to recap another weekend of Dolphins football. But until then, you guys take care. I don't know how to say goodbye in German, but we'll see you later. Bye.